Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Real Birding Podcast, the show where we crack open the world of birding and talk about our own birding adventures. I'm Will Keller, coming to you from Charlotte, North Carolina.
And I'm Caleb Putnam in Grand Rapids, Michigan.
Caleb, I'm excited to talk to you this week about the detective work that birders get to do from time to time. We kind of do detective work every single day, but there's some real discoveries that are yet to be made, and I can't wait to crack into it. Mr. Putnam.
Mr. Keller, what's happening, man? It's May 1st.
May Day, let's go. Yeah, it's like should be a national holiday for birders.
It sure feels like it. I just can't believe that it's here. I mean, to me, I don't know. Psychologically, it feels like we're still in March or early April or something, but it's on. It's here.
I can't believe we could both get time on our schedule to even record.
Yeah, this is not a good month to be asking for time on my calendar. That's for dang sure. But for
Seriously.
this podcast, we make it happen. It's important to share the joy with everybody.
Yeah, that's right. Have you been getting out?
Yeah, in fact, we got out to the dune. We had really excellent winds, southeast winds pushing birds into the lake shore and on Lake Michigan on the 28th, Monday, and had a pretty great breakout flight. All kinds of first of year species mixed in there. Like an early bobolink was really cool, a little bit early. Baltimore Orioles were starting to move. Eastern kingbirds were starting to move. Things like great crested flycatcher. We had a water thrush, just a few other warblers and things. But what was really interesting about it is even though the winds were perfect for hawks to fly and it was perfect temperatures and everything, nothing flew. We didn't get a single broadwing. We didn't get a single harrier. I think we got one kestrel and like 4 sharpshins that moved early in the morning. And then once the conditions got good, nothing flew at all. It was very strange. And I do not know what to make of that.
Call that a Will Keller dune watch.
Yeah, except you weren't there.
I was sending you my bad luck vibes. No, I can't complain. We've had some pretty spectacular days on the dune. I myself had quite the eventful birding weekend.
Yeah, actually, I caught wind of this big day attempt of yours. Why don't you tell us all about it?
Okay, so for the listeners who don't know what a big day is, it's kind of like the same idea of a big year or a big month, but it's trying to find as many species as you can within some period of time. In this case, one 24-hour period. And we did it all within the home county that we live in, which is Mecklenburg. So right off the bat, you can imagine there's probably some serious challenges to trying to find lots of species in a very highly densely populated kind of urban area, because there's just not that much habitat. Like we're used to birding Berrien County and Allegan County, where you can get out at least into farm fields and get into little wetlands here and wetlands there. But even finding a decent wetland down here is hard because it's so suburban sprawly down here. But we still had a pretty fun day. We started out at 3 a.m. and we drove to this area that's known to have lots of owls and whippoorwills. And within about an hour, we got lots of whippoorwills and an eastern screech owl, which is, if you've ever done a big day, you think that the owls are going to be easy, and they never are. You always miss stuff like eastern screech owl, so we were pumped to get that right away.
Absolutely.
And then as the sun came up, we just started racking up species, and by the time we left our first spot, we had like 83 species.
Oh wow! So what would the record be, or what would like your target be for that day?
So we were shooting for 124 species, which would beat the record by 1. And we had a really good morning. Like we thought we were on track to beat that. We got around to noon, and we actually got somebody to take us out on Lake Norman, which is the big lake that we have here in Mecklenburg County. And we were like, okay, we need to get pied-billed grebe and maybe a straggler common loon. And we ended up getting just a few species. We ended up getting lots of ring-billed gulls, and we actually had 2 common terns. And we ended up following the common terns around for a while, and they landed on a piece of driftwood in the middle of the lake. And we were all like, I was a little bit like, I was excited because I love that bird, but they don't see common terns that much. The people that I was birding with, which are just a couple of local guys. So that was pretty fun. And then the afternoon hit, and You do not want to be birding in the afternoon when you have a goal to see lots of different species of birds. It gets so frustrating because the birds are super quiet and it was hot and it was a little bit windy.
Hmm.
So basically, we spent the entire rest of the afternoon hoping to get one or two species at every single location that we hit. And we actually got to one spot in the late afternoon and we gave up after walking 200 yards down this path because it was dead quiet.
Oh no. Was it like 90 degrees, doldrum type stuff, or was it just kind of midday doldrums in general?
Yeah, it wasn't even that hot. It was midday doldrums. Yeah. It
Wow.
totally petered out. But then our luck picked back up a little bit at the last spot we hit before it got dark. We pulled up looking at this wetland where marsh wren had been reported, and we get out of the car, and the first bird we see is this white wading bird, and we're like, "Oh, we already have great egret." And then we took a closer look, and it was a snowy egret,
Oh, nice.
which it's
That was
actually a very good bird in Mecklenburg County. It was only the,
mm,
I think, third record, or no, sorry, it was the first record in 2 or 3 years. So it's a pretty tough bird, and we got that. So that was pretty fun, but we're still really struggling to get birds. We were sitting right around like 110, 111 at this time. So at this point, we came to terms with the fact that we weren't going to be able to break the record this year just because it was uncharacteristically quiet in the afternoon. But
yeah.
we go to the last spot of the day to try to get Chuck Will's widow at a spot where we know we're going to get Chuck Will's widow. And of course, the Chuck Will's widow never starts singing, but we did pick up a American woodcock and a great horned owl. So can't complain too much. We finished the day with 114 species, which was nine birds shy of the record and 10 birds shy of breaking the record. So we, lots of lessons learned, and hopefully next year we can, come back even harder and break that record.
Yeah, not bad, not bad. You didn't go midnight till midnight then, right? Do you think that
No,
would there
that's
been any advantage if you started a little earlier or whatever?
well, and honestly, if we were closer to getting the record, we would have been able to pick up barred owl by hitting just a few places. We only tried one spot for barred owl throughout the day, and I think at the end of the day, you know how it is when you're
Oh yeah.
birding, when you're up that early and you're just running on fumes. You've gone through a lot of emotional highs and lows, and it's like, all right, that's enough. Let's go to bed.
That's why you got to do this when you're in your 20s, like you are.
Yeah, for sure.
The other thing it really resonated with me is people doing these things often will have trouble with something like hairy woodpecker, white-breasted nuthatch. In fact, we missed both of those species on our day at the dune, and it's no
Ah,
mystery to me why people miss them on big days. You'll also have the same thing with like Cooper's hawk. It's a type of bird. If you're out all day, you should see one, but you could have trouble, when you're driving around in specific habitats, doing a lot of targeted stuff. So yeah, big days they're a unique thing, man.
well, and let me just tell you, the biggest miss of the day was a killdeer. We did not get one killdeer throughout the entire day, and that's the bird that we should be getting literally from the highway. And our buddy Cody Little, who we did this big day with, he lives right next to a city park where killdeer breed. So we're like, okay, we're gonna swing right by there. We're gonna get Lincoln sparrow and we're gonna get killdeer. And Lincoln sparrow was easy, even though it's a pretty rare bird in the county. We knew it would be there, and we got it easily just by fishing. And then we go around, we're walking around this pond looking for killdeer, and they're nowhere to be found. And the sun's getting lower in the sky, and we're like, I think we got to keep moving.
Unbelievable. Why would you have missed them? Wouldn't they be on eggs or attending young or something?
So I think what happened is the young were getting big enough that they were straying a little further from the parents. And I think the
Mm,
parents were laying low and trying not to bring any attention to themselves. There's always that time of year where one bird for like 3 weeks becomes impossible to get
yeah,
because there's young around and they're trying to be really secretive. And I think we
yeah,
just
yeah,
timed it wrong with killdeer. Luckily, it wasn't like a make it or break it bird. Like we weren't going to get the record anyways because we missed out on a ton of just neotropic easy stuff that
yeah,
it's
yeah,
like, well, if they're not singing, we're not going to get on them. Like bay-breasted warbler. There's only so much scanning treetops that you can do for that bird.
yeah. Right, right. Yeah, I mean, and
Yeah.
that's kind of the thing, right? You look at the list of possibilities, and your stomach gets bigger in your eyes, and you're like, oh, I can get all these, no problem. They're not even none of these are really that rare, and I have a whole 24-hour period to do it, so I'll probably get them all. And then you end up missing what, 10 of them, 15?
Oh
You know what I
yeah.
mean?
So you can see on eBird how many species have been recorded in the county in the last week, and it was like 145 species, and we were like, well, none of these are rare. These are all gettable birds. So yeah, I mean, we missed 30 some relatively easy birds that I'm sure we like. it's a total crapshoot. We could get them any other day we went out, but yeah. Either way,
And it's
it's just
almost,
a fun.
well, it just say it's almost like when you finally win it and set the record, it's almost like you just got a little bit luckier than most people did because you missed fewer of the 30. You know what I mean? You're all going to
Yeah,
get most of the species, but like, to put it all together, there's definitely a luck element involved with this stuff. Like anything. And
yeah,
I,
and
I
it's
would say it's part of the fun, really, right? I
oh
mean,
yeah,
if you went out knowing you're going to get all of them every time, it wouldn't. I don't know. It wouldn't be quite the same, you know.
yeah. You want to talk about something that's not a matter of luck in the world of birding is birding detective work. And that's the kind of the concept for this episode. So let's get into it, dude. You have been doing some pretty insane birding detective work in the last week, and you've made a discovery that I'm not sure is on hardly anybody's radar. Can you fill me in on this?
Yeah. So I'm an eBird reviewer, as you know, and I had this report in my queue of a common nighthawk from Hudsonville, Michigan, which is right by Grand Rapids. And common nighthawk's fairly common bird during migration. If you live in the right place, they're common throughout the summer. But the thing is they don't really show up here until I don't know May 10th, May 15th, kind of on a at the beginning edge of their window. And this report was from like April 17th. So I was just like, I was mulling it over for like 4 or 5 days, and I'm like, the description was good. It was like a brown bird with white nicks in the wing at 8:48 p.m., which is like sunset, and it was swooping for insects low over the field. So like all the pieces are there, but I just don't. I'm very very skeptical that a common nighthawk would be here this early. It didn't make sense to me. So I opened up the common nighthawk map, which I'm going to share with you here
Sweet.
for 2025. So this has some more pins on it now than when it did 5 days ago when I first checked it out. But there were still like maybe 10 or 12 pins. Some of them were in Cleveland, some of them were in Chicagoland, this type of stuff. And I thought to myself, I'm gonna check for photos of these early arriving birds that are like maybe a full month early, and kind of just did one of these things. And I ended up on this checklist from Kentucky. This is from Western Kentucky on 7 April, which is even earlier than what it should be. Here's the checklist here. They found a nighthawk dead in the road, and they, of course, I mean, there's Kentucky doesn't have any nighthawks other than common. So if you find a nighthawk in that state, you just think it's a common nighthawk. Well, have a look at this. This is a very advanced identification, but I know what I'm looking for. And you'll notice that this white bar here, instead of being midway from the wrist to the wingtip, which would be here, and then these tan nicks in these feathers, in these primary feathers on the close side of the white bar, that's diagnostic for lesser nighthawk, but those two things alone. So I immediately looked at this and went, that is a lesser nighthawk. So I went and looked it up. Kentucky had 0 records of them. And this has apparently turned into the first record, or the plot thickens. It might actually be the second record, because this apparently got a discussion going amongst the Kentucky crowd. And so there was like a handful of other reports from across the state around the same time frame, like 7 April to mid-April. So they started circulating photos, and another set of photos of a live bird flying around came out that were also demonstrably a lesser nighthawk. So
Wow.
just by looking at the map and having this knowledge that lesser nighthawk, and we didn't specify, this is a Western bird. These things are only common once you get out to like Colorado, Utah, and kind of up the Great Basin in California. They do not come east of the Mississippi normally. But it's just one of them things where you build up an expectation that common nighthawk doesn't come until later. And so when something is a month early, your hackles go up a little bit. And if people hadn't had photos of these, we wouldn't be able to do anything with it. Also, let me show you one other thing that happened here. So I also had a third report, and it was from Madison, Wisconsin, a little bit later than these other two, where they put photos of a common nighthawk up, and it also was confirmed as a lesser nighthawk. All of these states east of the Mississippi, this is an extremely rare bird. People are not thinking. This is the thing. We don't think about it. If you
Right.
see a nighthawk in these states, it's got to be a common, because that's all we have is the dogma. But every now and again in birding, these revelations come to mind, and it's just so thrilling. Like I was so excited when I when I figured out that there were actual lessers in there, because that was kind of what my suspicion was.
So, dude, here's what gets me about this. I think there's one of two things that are going on, and we can probably actually figure out which of the two it is. There are some species like palm warbler, for example, where if one shows up a month before the rest of them show up, you don't really think too hard about it because it's a short distance migrant and things like this happen. And then, but there's other birds that don't ever do this behavior, and they all come basically during the same 10-day period, and they all move through.
Mm-hmm.
Common nighthawk is one of these birds. So, is this a situation where we're having an eruption of lesser nighthawks in the east, or is this a situation where every single year people assume that their early nighthawks are all common, when really every single year the east is getting 10 to 15 lesser nighthawks, and our dogma is not being pressed and it's not being challenged because people aren't really thinking, no, this isn't a species that does this. You know what I mean?
Yep. And a lot of them got approved as common nighthawks without documentation, or at least from what you can see in the eBird maps. But I completely agree with you, Will. If I had to put money on this, I would say that lesser nighthawks come in small numbers probably every year. And there's probably good years and lower years, but the fact that 3 have been found as a result of this means that there are many more than 3 that actually occurred. I do not believe birders find 100% of the rarities that are present east of Mississippi. I just don't believe it. And
Well, that
the,
that would make lesser nighthawk as abundant in the east as like western kingbird, which is
yeah,
just crazy to think about. It doesn't
potentially.
seem like a bird that you could get in Michigan. I never, if someone would have asked me, has lesser nighthawk ever, occurred in Michigan, I would say, I really doubt it. But now it's almost like with this new revelation, it's like, yeah, probably it happens every few years, and we we don't know.
And it might even be annual, but it's just, it's a nocturnal bird. It Like the lady that had it in Hudsonville, it was there at dusk and she saw it for 5 minutes and then never saw it again. So that we wouldn't even have been able to go look at it if we tried. And lesser nighthawks don't
Yeah.
vocalize. That's another thing. Common nighthawks do, but lesser nighthawks tend not to make any noises at all unless they're on the territory.
Mm.
So the main clue that you could have about it is kind of absent. You know, there's all kinds of other groups of birds where this concept would apply. Things like when hummingbirds started to show up in November and December in the east, and then they ended up being like rufous hummingbirds and other species. There was a time period where it wasn't understood that there was hummingbirds other than ruby-throateds in the east.
Mm.
Swington's hawk showing up at Cape May in the early books, like back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, before they had figured it out. I got the time frame wrong on that, but there was a time frame where there was a genuine mystery. These weird looking buteos would come over the point, and people didn't know what they were. Well, the cat's out of the bag. Here's the take home: there are, without question, many similar types of discoveries just waiting to be made, and we made one with this lesser thing. And it's yet another reason why birding is like the best hobby out there. It's just never
Yeah.
ending fun.
Yeah, and like we're in the golden age of it right now. People talk about the golden age of birding, and it's happening right now, especially with eBird and Merlin, and with like a, what is it, like a 30% increase in eBird users since the pandemic. There's just
Yep,
so much more data than there has ever been before, and it's publicly accessible. Dude, don't you feel lucky to be alive right now as a birder? In some ways,
absolutely.
yeah. Right?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I take your point. There's a lot of conservation problems that aren't the most exciting to be a part of, but
Mhm.
yeah, this is going to segue really nicely into this black swift story that I want to tell you about. That it's
Yeah.
such a perfect example of detective work. So, the technological developments of late have really allowed us to take things to the next level. So this is the range of the black swift, which is honestly one of my very favorite bird species in the world. If I could be a bird, this is the one I would be, because nobody can catch them. It's a huge swift. They spend so much time on the wing, and they're super fast. And then when they finally do come down to land, it's behind a waterfall where they nest. It's
Wow.
just kind of like idyllic life, that they get to live, and they're free from predation. There's just nothing to do but just chill around up high in the atmosphere and sit on these nests behind your waterfall.
Yeah.
So anyway, here is the range map of these guys. Interestingly, in the tropics down here, there are resident ones that are around in kind of mountaintop type stuff year round. But in the American West, there's this population of highly migratory ones that are very, very uncommon. I mean, I don't know what the world population of the northern group is, but it might be, I wouldn't be surprised if it's like 500 to 1,000 pairs in the world. There's not that many of them. And amazingly, nobody knew where these things were spending the winter, even at the turn of the century, that past the year 2000. We still didn't know where. We finally figured out what they were doing with the nests, but we didn't know where they were wintering. So finally, these geolocators, these little devices that are now able to be kind of put onto the backs of these increasingly smaller birds. I think it has to be like 3% of the bird's mass or less for the banding lab to allow it. But the technology finally happened, and this paper was published. Now it was a little over 10 years ago. I think it was like 2012 or so. Yeah, 2012. And in 2009, folks went up to these waterfalls out west, and they affixed these geolocator transmitters to the backs of a bunch of these, and you have to recapture the bird to get the data. So they did not recapture all of them, but most of them did return to the same place that they got them, and they were able to get the data. And I'm going to show you it now. So people literally had no idea what the answer was going to be, and in all four of the birds that got the data back, you get the exact same result. It is in the Amazonas state of Brazil, where like 212 days was the average winter duration of their visit. And they also learned exactly the flight paths and the timing of when they moved around. So it appears that the wintering distribution of the whole northern group of these is in this very limited area of the Amazon. This is where it gets so funny. This is the all-time eBird map, even with the knowledge that that's where they are from. Look at this. There's only one pin from the key core wintering area where most of the world's northern black swifts winter. And this is so cool too. This was in 2019. And look at this. This was Cypseloides swifts identified from photographs taken by Brett Whitney. That is some detective sleuthing right there to figure that out.
Imagine being a bird lister living in Brazil and figuring out that there's a species that literally is not quite a resident, but is in your country 2/3 of the year, and you
Yeah.
didn't even know about it.
I didn't even know it was there. And
The
other thing, like when you're in the Amazon, there's undiscovered species all over the place. I would venture there's, I don't want to go dozens, but there's plenty of other species that are still undiscovered in the tropics. I have no qualms in saying that.
Yeah. Imagine the feeling of pulling a geolocator off of that bird, literally a full calendar year after you put it on that bird. What feeling would you have plugging that chip into your computer and going, I don't know what I'm going to see, and then figuring it out? It's so simple.
Yeah.
You just needed the technology to catch up to the research questions.
Yeah, the excitement level of when you're pulling that data off of there must have just been undeniable and unbelievable. And also, like, did the device fail? You're worried about whether it failed or not, and thank God it didn't, because what this will do is it will allow us to figure out if there's any conservation issues that need to be addressed in that area of the cycle. If you don't know where these things spend part of their cycle, there's no way to know how to protect them. One other piece to the puzzle, speaking of detective work, you will note in the map that there is this weird gap in the state of Texas. They had no records of black swift in Texas, and people didn't understand, is there a time frame where we could be looking for them, or is there any reason to suspect that they might come through? And the locator data told them the exact date range that they were coming through, and showed that it's not high resolution because it's geolocators, but it gives you like a circle on the map of where the bird was that day, using like photo period and longitude and stuff like that. And anyway, it showed pretty conclusively that they were coming over this West Texas region on a specific date. Birders finally picked up on this and came down to the river here. I believe the story goes, it was a rainy, you know how swifts are. If they'll come down in the rain, in the rainy conditions, they'll fly lower instead of being like way up in the atmosphere. and folks were finally able to add it to the Texas list by using that method. Yeah, I think this might have been the first one right here. Yeah, 2018. And you
That's
can see it's kind of
amazing.
cloudy conditions. And oh, they don't arrive in the breeding grounds till like June 1st. The transmitter data showed they didn't even leave the Amazon until May 13th. So they knew it would be toward the latter half of that May 13th to June 1st period. And look at the date, 26 May, right over West Texas, over the river. And there you go, first state record.
It's crazy. And Texas is such a heavily birded state. Finding first state records there is one of the more challenging things to do in the world of birding.
It really, yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's so many people and you know the knowledge base, but it's like how many more discoveries like this are out there waiting to be discovered right now, and we haven't even just thought of them. And it can literally be any listener. It can be anybody in birding if you're tuned in, paying attention, and doing your own sleuthing of dates and locations and microhabitats. And is the weather perfect at the moment that you're out there? Are the clouds coming down? Is there precipitation? If you put all those pieces together, you will make interesting discoveries. I think that Nighthawk example proves it.
Yeah, absolutely. Caleb, I just realized we forgot to do our birding quiz, our sound quiz.
No.
So let's fit that in here towards the end of the episode. Are you cool with that?
Let's do it.
Okay. Last week, we played for you guys the song of a black-throated green warbler, an all-time classic Eastern North American warbler with a beautiful song. And a user by the name of Heavy Two Hands Outdoors guessed that correctly. This week,
Nice.
we're going to play for you a different song. So if you think you know what is doing this song or call, drop the name in the comments, and we might give you a shout out at the beginning of next week's episode. All right, here we go. All right. I bet you think you know what this bird sounds like, but many people don't because there is some, let's just say, a little bit of pop culture confusion about what this bird sounds like. That'll be your own little hint for this week. And
Nicely
to
said.
set, yeah, thank you. To send us off, we've got another listener shout out, right?
Yes, in fact, this is our inaugural Bird of the Week segment. This is a new segment we're going to be trying out. In this segment, we would ask all listeners to send us your best sightings from the week, whether it's a photo or a story of something interesting that happened or something you didn't expect to happen. Any kind of birding story that really made your week. Send that to us. We're going to do one feature a week. And for this week's Bird of the Week, we are going to Hastings, Michigan, just south of Grand Rapids, to the home of Gail and Dell Batchert. Shout out to you guys, loyal listeners. They've been there since the beginning with us. And they had this lovely Brewster's Warbler coming in to their brush pile and down to a bird bath that I have been working with them on. What a stunner of a bird.
So cool.
It just,
I've never seen a Brewster's or a Lawrence's warbler, and I think we're gonna have to do a little bit of an explanation as to what we're talking about here, because this is not actually a species of bird, which is like an insane thing to say when you're looking at a picture of a bird. But yeah,
do tell. What
well,
is it
I
then?
think you can probably explain it better than I can. But this is a hybrid between a golden-winged warbler and a blue-winged warbler, which are two extremely closely related species of warblers that sound very similar and use very similar habitat and behave very similarly, but they look completely different. And when they hybridize, they have two different potential phenotypes, which is the Brewster's warbler and the blue-winged warbler.
The
Or sorry,
Lawrence
the
Warbler.
the Lawrence's warbler, excuse
Yeah,
me.
yeah. The blue wing is the other parent. And it's not common to see these guys. I'm going to say that. You can come across them, I don't know, once out of every maybe 15 or 20 golden wings or blue wings that you hear might turn into one of these if you track it down. But to actually get this in your yard, and by the way, they think they have two of them potentially because there's a lot of yellow on the underside on this one and then less on the supposed other bird, but it's a little bit hard to tell from the photos. But in any event, that is a really nice treat for the backyard bird list. I definitely have never seen that one in my yard before.
Yeah, it's really cool.
So keep those coming in, folks. And we will look forward to featuring some others of you next week.
Well, thanks everybody for tuning in to the Real Birding Podcast. We are just a handful of subscribers off from 300 subscribers on YouTube. So if you think you know anybody who would like our show, please share it and ask them to subscribe. Subscribe yourself if you haven't already. It's the best way for you to support the show. But otherwise, peace and have a good birding week.
Get out there and sleuth something for yourself this week, folks, and we'll look forward to hearing about it then. Peace.